Hello everyone, this is Mr. Bay. Today I'm going to go over all of the activities that you can do in Chapter 1, Changes Caused by Light. So first we're going to go to Lesson 1.2, Light and Energy. In Light and Energy, there are a total of 3 activities that you can complete. The first one is in the warm-up. Once you get to the warm-up, just scroll to the very bottom, you'll notice that there is a question. The sun causes changes to things on Earth. Think of an object you have observed before and after it was left out in the sun. Describe how it changed. So just write down an instance where you felt like you saw an object change because of the sunlight. That's pretty much it. So for example, I saw a puddle disappear, or an example of the sun causing changes to Earth was when I saw ... and then write your answer down there. In number 3, there is a hands-on activity. So specifically on slides 2 and 3, you will notice the activities are listed there. So when you get down to this part here, it'll ask you a question. Shine the light on the liquid crystal sheet. Did you observe evidence that light carries energy? Click on either yes or no. And whatever evidence you've seen, just write down your observations here. So I observed the crystal liquid sheet ... depending on your answer there. On slide 3, you're going to scroll down again. You're going to get to the part where it says compare the temperatures of the 2 thermometers. Did you observe evidence that light carries energy? So on this one, you're simply having a flashlight shine light on thermometers, see if anything changed. And if you did, click yes. If no, click no, and then write down any evidence that you saw from there. Number 4 is the homework anticipation guide. So here, guys, what happens is that there are several statements. You have to write down whether you agree or disagree. Then write down your thoughts as to why you agree or disagree with the statement. So for the first one, you'll be like, light causes the same change to all materials. You would say, I agree or disagree because, and then write down your thoughts right there. Okay, and this is the same format you'll be using for every single statement. All light is the same whether it comes from the sun, a light bulb, or anywhere else. All light can be seen, and light can travel through materials that you cannot see through, like wood or aluminum foil. So once again, tell me whether you agree, tell me whether you disagree, and then tell me why. Okay? The very last part, choose a statement you are most sure about. It can be a statement that you agree or disagree with. So from here, just pick which statement you agree or disagree with most, and tell us why you agree with it so much. And then press your hand and button, bottom right hand corner right there. And now we're moving on to lesson 1.3, explaining changes from light. There are a total of 3 activities that you can submit from lesson 1.3. The first one is in the simulation. So in the simulation, it's going to ask you to open up the light wave simulation, which you can click here. So any words in blue, typically it will take you straight to the simulation. It'll give you some instructions to walk you through what you're supposed to see and what you're supposed to introduce. And then what's going to happen is that it'll then ask you to open up the simulation, choose several materials, keep the sun on it as a light source, and then inspect what happens to these materials as sunlight is being shown on these objects. So here's the simulation, and we're just going to do a quick observation of a couple of these objects. So first of all, please make sure that the toggle right here is on the sun, because we're looking at what the sun can do to these objects. You'll put various objects on here. So for example, I'll put aluminum right there onto the path so that when the sunlight shines on it, it'll hit the aluminum foil. When I turn on, you'll notice that the light is being reflected. You can click on inspect and it'll tell you whether or not a change occurred with the specific object. Using that information, you will then go back to here and then click on the various options or option where light from the sun actually causes that object to change. You'll do the same thing for number 2, where you will have to click on objects that specifically do not cause the object to change. Moving on to number 4. So number 4, you're going to specifically look at genetic material in the simulation. So what you will do is that instead of putting down those various objects, you will instead put genetic material, and then you're going to observe by pressing the inspect button what exactly happens to genetic material when it's exposed to sunlight. Once you have that information, write your observations down here, and then next question is, how is it possible for light to change genetic material? So be very specific. Please make sure you use the words light, energy, and absorb when you are answering this specific question. Once again, please use the words light, energy, and very important, use absorb when you answer that question, please. Please. Alright, moving on to number 5. The homework for today is simply to use the lightwave simulation in simple mode. And all I want you to do is check what changes were caused by light from a light bulb. Okay? So try a couple different types of things and see if any changes were to occur on this specific material using a light bulb. And also, once again, it's reiterating that question of what has to happen for light to change the material, and make sure you use those vocabulary terms. Specific ones would be transmit, absorb, and reflect. Last but certainly not least will be lesson 1.4, explaining sunlight and skin cancer. Be aware that every single activity here has an activity that you can submit. So you can start number 1, warm up. In the warm up, it's going to ask you to click on the reason why when you shined light on a solar powered toy, why exactly that phenomenon occurred. So whichever statements you agree with, pick whichever ones you agree with, and then move on to the next question. So in number 2, you'll be modeling the cause of skin cancer. What you'll notice is that at the very bottom, there's a question, how can light from the sun cause skin cancer? Write down your answer right here. You should be looking and analyzing the modeling tool. The modeling tool will look something like this, where you pick the source, whether it could be a flashlight or sunlight or UV light. You will then write down specifically what change occurred, which is either damage, movement, photosynthesis, warmth, or none. And then using that information, you will then answer the question at the very bottom of that slide. And now we're moving on to activity number 3. So in activity number 3, there are a total of 5 slides. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there are 3 claims that's on slide 1. Australia gets a lot of sunlight. There's something different about the sunlight on Australia. And more people in Australia have skin that is easily damaged by light from the sun. Slides 2, 3, and 4 have work for you to turn in specifically. So when you scroll to the very bottom, there will be 2 things you'll need to do. If claim 1 is accurate, I would expect Brazil to have a cancer rate that is higher than, lower than, or the same as Australia's. Keep in mind, once again, claim 1 was Australia gets a lot of sunlight. So if Australia gets a lot of sunlight, what do you think would happen to the cancer rate for people who live in Brazil? Write down your answer below. Do your best to use the words absorb, energy, and light when answering that question. Moving on to slide 3. So slide 3 is going to have you look at the same map, and once again, if claim 1 is accurate, so once again claim 1 is if Australia gets a lot of sunlight, what would you expect to have happen in Egypt? I would expect Egypt to have a cancer rate that is higher than, lower than, or the same as Australia if claim 1 were true, that Australia gets a lot of sunlight. So what would you expect to have happened to Egypt? And write your answer down there. Once again, write down the explanation using the words absorb, energy, and light. And last but not least, we are going to slide number 4. So slide number 4 is asking if Australia gets a lot of sunlight, if that claim is true. What would you expect to have happen to the cancer rate of people who live in Japan? Would it be higher than, lower than, or the same as the people in Australia? And Japan is located right there. So once again, write down your answer, write down an explanation. Please use the words absorb, energy, and light when answering your question. Section 4 is homework. And in section 4, it asks you to look at the claims and to look at the world sunlight map and look at the world skin cancer map. Because based off of what you notice on the sunlight map and assuming that claim 1 is true, you would expect something to happen to the cancer rates of people living in Brazil, Egypt, and Japan. However, this world skin cancer map actually details the actual rate of skin cancer in those respective countries. So question 1 is asking, what does this world sunlight map tell you about how much sunlight Australia gets compared to Brazil? Please look at that map to figure out that answer to that question. Okay, try to use numbers. So super dark orange or red is over 2,000. Between 2,000 and 3,000 is about orange. Lighter orangish yellow is 2,000 to 1,000. And then the super lighter yellow is 1,000 to 500. And lighter than that's under 500. Write your answer there. And then in the second question, what does the world skin cancer map tell you about how the skin cancer rates on Australia and Brazil differ? So look at Australia's skin cancer rate, and then look at Brazil's skin cancer rate, and then write your answer down of what it tells you there. Last but not least, self-assessment. This is optional. What you need to do is rank yourself on whether you understand how light from the sun can cause skin cancer. There are various statements. Choose whether you understand it or whether you don't get it yet. Please also be aware that the way Amplify is designed, you should intentionally not know the answer to some of these statements because you simply haven't learned it yet. So if there are certain statements where you're like, I don't really understand it, it's totally fine to just put not yet. Because understandably, you haven't learned it yet. So how would you know? You don't know. So once again, write down whether you get it, whether you don't get it, and then write down tell me why. Some of them you might have just learned it. Some of them might just be as simple as, I haven't learned it yet. And then turn in your work for that one there.